And we're live to review a pretty darn good episode of Homicide, Life on the Street. I'll give my verdict at the end, build some suspense, but it's not one. Over to you, Jeff, for the summary and background notes, if you have them.
All right. This is Every Mother's Son, which was the 10th episode of season 9, I believe.
Yep.
I'm sorry, season 3. The episode started thinking episode 9. Anyway, it's called Every Mother's Son. Originally aired January 6, 1995. And in Pembleton and Bayliss investigate the shooting of a young boy who was killed at a bowling alley. During the investigation, the mother of the victim meets the mother of the shooter in the aquarium. The shooter shows no remorse for the killing, although he shot the wrong kid. Much Bayliss and Lewis can't remodel the bar when they discover it's been classified a historical landmark. Then when they find out back taxes are due in the building, should they shut down before they even open. Bo finds out his kids are in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, so he goes to find them. And that's pretty brief, so I'm gonna look at these reviews that are on TV.com. This guy's pretty consistent in sort of summarizing things while he does it. So let me read this David Morris guy's thing again. And he says, some episodes of television are impossible to enjoy. That is because the subject and writing are so serious and tragic that to take any pleasure in it seems wrong. This is the kind of TV that leaves you emotionally raw and drained. This, in my mind, is what must-see TV should really be. Many dramas go their entire run without any such episodes. Others, like ER, NYPD Blue, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, may be managed one a season. Homicide averaged 2 or 3 a year. This season, we have already seen the detectives go through a wrenching journey in Cressetti. Now, in Every Mother's Son, we get one that is less personal, but no less powerful. As we saw in the Adina Watson investigation, the death of a child is an experience where the tragedy seems to overcome even the detectives investigating the crime. More of the agony came because of the brutality of the death. This one is affecting because of the coldness of the killer. A 14-year-old boy named Daryl Knowles is shot point blank in the head when another kid walks up to him in a bowling alley, takes out a gun, and shoots him 3 times. A gang hit, one would assume, except Daryl wasn't in a gang. Part of the power of the Watson case was that we never knew who did it. In this shooting, we know who did it before the guest star credits have rolled. Ronnie Sayers, also 14. Does he run with a gang? We never find out for sure. When Bayliss and Pembleton track him down, he doesn't seem to be in one. He does, however, have the coldness of someone who's been on the street for a while. When the detectives finally pin him down, he reveals he thought the victim was another kid. The shooting was a mistake. But even more chilling is his reaction to this. He believes that because he shot the wrong person, he's going to walk away from this. When his mother tries to help him, he cops to the charge in order to get her out of the room. Even when he is taken to processing, he still doesn't seem to understand the magnitude of what he's put himself in for. John Nelson, who a few months later would explode onto the screen in Fresh, plays Ronnie as someone who is more or less totally indifferent to the concept of death or responsibility. How much of this is a front is hard to tell, but his calmness to everything that is happening to him is frightening. Now, all of this is powerful in its own right, but it's only half the story. The power of this episode comes from the reactions of the 2 mothers who are caught up in this tragedy, Mary Knowles and Patrice Sayers. As the writers make very clear, both have lost a child to this crime. Daryl is dead. Ronnie is probably going away for life. But what makes this painful is how much these women have in common. Both are single parents with no husbands to be found. Both have another child at home. And both of them are absolutely appalled as to what is happening to the children of Baltimore. Mary Knowles says that she's been to 3 funerals of Daryl's friends, something which a lot of mothers in the ghetto must go through. There seems to be no release from any of this. All of this is made clear in one of the most stunning scenes that the show would ever do, where both women, not knowing who the other is, share their grief in a witness room in the Baltimore police station. It should seem heavy-handed, but it comes off naturally and unforced. The episode also has an incredibly poignant coda when Patrice comes to Mary's place of business and tries to offer her sympathy. The 2 younger children play together, and there seems the tiniest glimmer of light, which is immediately shot down when Mary asks what will happen if those 2 get older and learn that one's brother killed the other. There is no real hope, and this makes everything even more poignant. Now, given the grimness and senselessness of the tragedy, one would have to be made of stone not to feel something. But Pembleton does a good job of seeming relatively calm and impartial as always, until he goes to the coffee room before taking the boy to processing. Howard asks his counsel on another case, whereupon Pembleton delivers one of his most memorable monologues in the show's history. Every day I get out of bed and drag myself to the next cup of coffee. I take a sip and the caffeine kicks in. I'm ready to rock. The time is coming when I wake up and decide I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not getting up for coffee or food or sex. If it comes to me, fine. If it won't, fine. No more expectations. The longer I live, the less I know. You're suspicious of your suspicions? I'm jealous, Kay. You still have the heart to have doubts. I'm going to lock up a 14-year-old kid for what could be the rest of his natural life. I gotta do this. This is my job. This is the deal. This is the law. This is my day. I have no doubts or suspicions anymore. Heart has nothing to do with it anymore. It's all in the caffeine. This distress is not the only sign that Pembleton is disturbed by this. The day Ronnie Sayers' health will prevail. Pembleton, influenced by a sleepless night, gives him his card and tells him to keep his ass to the wall, don't ask for anything. He knows what prisoners will do to this boy. He knows that his life is over. Frank's reflection and anguish is probably due to the fact that he and Mary are considering having a baby, and the thought of bringing a child into the world where these horrible, pointless tragedies take place frightens him. Frank, like all the detectives, is cynical, but he needs to believe even in the darkness there is a possibility for something, but he knows there is a little chance. As he says after Sayers goes to jail, one time I'd like to hear about a murder that makes sense. Not going to happen. There are some light moments in this episode, most of it coming from Munch and Lewis's problems with the waterfront, combined with the unlikely role that George Washington played in the building's history. But for the most part, Every Mother's Son is one of the most wrenching hours the show produced. You come away from it feeling drained and overwhelmed, like you do with the best television. My score, 10. And then you have a few others here that weren't nearly as long, but I just read sort of the taglines. The one says the best episode of the best cop series ever. Storyline taken from Hill Street Blues. Pembleton Bayliss investigative bulleting. Okay, so overall, it, and like I said, it got really positive reviews. So anyway, Mr. Ben, what do you think?
Well, did you ever watch that series, Mr. Ben? There's a
Sorry, what?
children's TV series called. There was a children's TV series called Mr. Ben.
Your audio's kind of messing up, so.
Right. Oh yeah, I was just
hopefully
saying
it comes through on the
TV
video.
series called
I noticed that when I was watching some of the previous videos we did, that there were times where I couldn't understand what you said, where it came off fine on the video, and other times where what I was saying came out badly. So I don't ever know exactly how it's going to sound on the finished thing.
Right. Okay. So let me just go right. At the time, it seemed bad to you,
Yeah.
but then
Right now
when you watched the video, you hear what I said.
I can't understand anything you're saying.
No, okay. I'll try the I'll just if there's something naughty going on with G-Popper. See if it's oh right, something in the background is doing an automatic update. So can you hear me better now?
I heard that last line.
Right. Okay.
So can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds better.
Right. Yeah. Something in the background was doing an automatic update. Right. Okay. Should be better now. I may need to adjust my settings not to have the automatic updates on. Yeah. First of all, you got this good scene. Sequence. In oh yeah, the previous episode hasn't processed yet for some reason. The one with G, nothing personal. So if that keeps it up, we might need to record that one again.
Nice picture.
Yes, I've got quite a few of these women who are now 22 years older.
Yeah, I didn't mention obviously in those descriptions what the opening scene. So this comes from the detectives' visit to a football game they were invited to of the Canadian Football League. You might remember in a previous episode them talking about it and Bolander lamenting how they shouldn't be playing Canadian football in the same stadium where the Colts used to play.
Was it still on air when the Baltimore Ravens moved there?
Yeah, because that happened before the end of the 90s.
Right, so is that mentioned in the series?
I actually don't remember. I think it's possible it might have been mentioned briefly, but it wasn't. I don't remember them making a big deal about it.
I just wondered if Bolander would be happy about that. But, you know, maybe you don't want to tell me that. Maybe he gets killed off. We never know.
Well, I would expect that Bolander would still say it wasn't the same as the Colts, but at least it was American football, so maybe he wouldn't be too disappointed.
Right. So if he was alive, that's what he would have said. We don't know yet. Anyone can be killed off at any moment. Right. Apart from...
Yeah,
Pembleton.
Definitely Munch gets killed off. The version of him that was on Law & Order SVU was obviously a ghost projection of someone else.
Yeah, nice to see Howard wearing a tie. We got what was it? Gender equality for being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually read something. I think it was last night when I was reading a bunch of Homicide stuff because when I get into watching it again, I start doing that. And as on the show at the time, there was only one female homicide cop in Baltimore, and officially there was no dress code for female detectives because she was like the only one, and they didn't know what to do about that. So, so the show's costume designers actually, sort of conferred with Melissa Leo, the actress, as well as the consultants that were actually cops to say, well, what do you think she would wear? And they sort of agreed on a basic wardrobe for what Howard should wear. So
good. Because if you have in school uniform, they'll have girls wear ties.
Yeah.
Certain schools, I think. Anywho, there we have. Did I miss Harry Mendel? Wait a minute, is he a white dude, Harry Mendel?
Yes. Yeah, he played the interior decorator guy.
Oh.
Yeah, white dude with curly hair.
All right.
He's only in that one scene when they're in the bar, I think. Yeah. So
I think that the bar is better being unchanged. That bloody don't want it beige. Oh yeah, there was a great line later on from Lewis in when talking about Munch wants to put country and western music on, and he refers to it as cracker ass music.
Yeah.
There's a tie, very good. And then he got his bulletproof vest on, or bulletproof jacket. Right. Oh yeah, Pembleton now shaving his head rather than just having it really short.
Yep.
Yeah, but here the child actor's good who plays the suspect. Who actually did it.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah,
and these two are very good.
An episode like this doesn't work if you don't have good actors playing those parts because you really got to sell it, and they do, I think.
Yep.
Both him and the two mothers especially.
Yeah, I put that here. And this one in the foreground plays it well when she starts to realise what might be going down. Oh yeah, as soon as it happened, I put, as soon as I saw them two together, I wrote down, good scene idea, two mums, victim. and that was before they played it out. But just initially, when I saw that idea, I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yep. Yeah. I mentioned in a previous review that in the final season DVD, there's a sort of roundtable discussion of the major creative forces behind Homicide, and one of the people said, because they all picked their favorite scenes from the series, and one of them picked this scene with the two mothers as being the favorite. Another person picked the Pembleton in the box with Lane Staley, and another picked basically
the one with the
Friedman and Dina.
Was Lane Staley the one in black and blue?
Yes, and another picked basically the whole episode of 3 Men and Adina because it's all basically one scene. And then David Simon picked one I can't tell you yet because we haven't gotten to that episode.
Right. And then we got Lewis in Ebonics mode, I suppose. And wearing a sort of a shell suit. Like a rapper of the time. This is where... Right, did it say that he went on to star in something else? Did it say something called Fresh?
Yeah.
Did he do anything else after that?
I don't know.
Right, okay.
You know me, I'm not a research guy.
Okay.
If I happen to come across something, then I might remember it, but I don't, if I know somebody. Fresh, I think it was a movie, but I never saw it, so I don't really.
Right.
But this scene, what I liked about it was that it once again shows you a lot about Pembleton as a character, because, again, it's one of those situations where you substitute most of the other detectives in the squad, and this scene would never have happened.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't have reached out to him the way that Pembleton did. Even Bayliss, who, has expressed a lot of anguish over, children being killed and things like that, and had that, I still don't see him doing this. And I know some, Felton and Bolander, and Munch, none of them would have either. I mean, the closest we've had to something like that was when Howard went to see Von Perkins and Bob Gunn at the prison, and so that was close. But even that wasn't quite the same, because she was trying to she was still kind of looking at it from an angle of she wasn't sure she believed that he really did it until she really heard it from him. Whereas with Pembleton's case, it's not the same situation. He knows that he did it, but he's reaching out to him basically because he actually cares, and he feels something for what's going to happen to him.
I forgot, what is a bop gun?
I don't actually know. It comes from a funk song from the 70s, but I'm not actually sure what it refers to. They may have just thought it sounded cool. I don't know.
And then that's the scene at the end.
Yeah, another one that, like that review said of it, the kind of gut-wrenching thing, because it's like, oh, the kids can play together, but wait a minute, maybe they shouldn't. You have that moment where it's like, oh, and then they even look at each other as they're going out, like, is that going to be a few years down the road, the score is settled, because, and that will come up in future Homicide episodes too, whether that subject is basically like the cycle of violence in the city among the people that, continue to carry out vendettas over time.
Yeah, and you went through a bit of it before when the speech from Pembleton. Heart has nothing to do with it anymore. It's all in the caffeine. When he was talking about being jealous.
Yeah, I actually think that that there weren't enough of them, but there are some really good Frank and Kay scenes. And we had a couple earlier in the series, one like when they talked about the cop shooting, and we had some more tougher conflicts between the two, like Kay calling Frank a selfish jerk when he wouldn't go to the church for Cressetti's funeral, and then of course their talk about Kay not having to solve every case and all that. So I think they have some good interactions over the time in the show. And this was another good one where they were kind of talking past each other for the most part. Howard's trying to reach out and get a little bit of Pembleton's insight on detective-wise, and he's instead using the time to sort of philosophize instead.
Yeah. Because that's what ESFPs do, philosophize.
Sometimes, I guess.
Sometimes. It's an FI thing.
Well,
no, Ben, it's a human thing.
and I obviously I can't say for sure. I didn't write the character, and I can't be inside the head of a fictional character. But if he's anything like me, while he was saying those things, he was still very aware that it was sort of like a performance to the audience, like the thing referred to it being a monologue, that it really was sort of a monologue, and not just from the actor, but from the character.
Oh.
And that's the thing that I have a hard time conveying, I guess, to people that don't understand, my type, is that it's always, like, there's only two ways of being, it seems to me. And one is either performing or everything else, which is scary. Whereas it's the opposite for some people who, like, performance would be scary, and that's the uncomfortable thing. Whereas for me, it's exactly the opposite. The opportunity to be in the zone, be on the stage, be in that position to do that, that's when I feel myself. And then when I have to do everything else, that's when I feel scared.
Now, I would have given it 10 out of 10, but I'm taking a point off for the music. I'll give it 10 for the acting and the writing.
No, okay.
What do you give it?
I give it a 10. I like the music. That wasn't an issue at all. There were probably points where I could take a little bit off, but to me, the scenes that are great in this, they bring it up too much for it to be knocked off by anything else, really. And so, I mean, like the stuff with the bar stuff, like some of it was good though. I liked the waitress interviews.
Yeah.
But the decorating stuff really didn't do much for me. So there were a few things that I wasn't necessarily as enamored with. But like I said, to me, pretty much everything in the story about the actual shooting and the mothers and the kids and stuff was great to me, including Bayliss and Pembleton's discussion about how old is too old, or how old is old enough, and then when they talk about bringing a kid into the world and all that stuff, those conversations. Not the first and not the last between those two about lots of different things. So.
Well, there was a thing in England. That's either Morgan or a ghost. About the Jamie Bulger case, where two boys that were 10 at the time killed this baby, Jamie Bulger, and I think they were tried as adults. I'm not sure. Anyway, that story is a bit of a downer. Right.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure if there's any state in the U.S. that tries 10-year-olds as adults ever. I think that may be below the threshold for that. I think it depends on the state.
It certainly went to prison though. The two 10-year-olds.
Yeah, I heard they mentioned in this episode that I think it was the lawyer Maggie who says that 14 is like the magic age where it can go either way. So apparently, in the state of Maryland, 14 is the youngest you're able to be tried as an adult, but you aren't necessarily. It's up to the judge. So.
Well, in England, people used to leave school at 14.
Yeah, well, obviously in the U.S. too.
Mm.
Some people still do, but obviously it was a lot more prominent back in the days where, the oldest person would usually be counted on to come work for whatever the family business was. So,
I mean, I think legally, could kids leave school, say, in the 60s at 14?
I don't know. I'm not some expert on history of legal school stuff.
Okay. Anything else to add?
So, anything else to add?
It's one of them things where an episode's so good that there's not really much to say.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of. I find myself sometimes just being like, "Oh, this was a great scene. Oh, this was another great scene." I was,
I thought it was funny they kept saying he shot the wrong kid and being like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, shot the wrong kid." Can't blame him, man. Just shot the wrong kid. It's not cool.
Yeah, and that's another great thing about that with Homicide is that there's so many shows where there would have been something about who the other kid was. Like, he does say his name, but you never find out anything about this kid, what really happened, why he was going to do. And it's like, again, it's one of those things. Some things would say, "Oh, it's a loose end," but it isn't really, because yeah, it's like everything happens that way, and I mean, there's nobody who particularly cares,
Right.
Because the detective, it's not anything to do with their case. I mean, they don't need to know who the other kid was. I mean, I guess the only thing they could do was, tell the, patrol cop, maybe this other kid better watch out if somebody's trying to take revenge on him or something. But that would be about the only thing they could possibly do about it. And of course,
stretching
right,
for them.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stop anybody from doing it. So yeah, that's Yeah, I predicted when I watched this again that Ben's going to say this was grim. But obviously you still enjoyed it despite its grimness. So.
Yeah, I didn't actually find it that grim. And
well, that's. I don't know how anybody couldn't, but maybe you just have a different definition of that than I do.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's you see, maybe I've become desensitized after seeing so many episodes.
So.
That's one of the things.
Maybe so. It's well, I mean, I can say that even though I can sit here and watch that episode again and say it was really good and it's very powerful, I think. Even in me, it doesn't rise quite to the level of either 3 Men and a Dino or Bob Gun, so I still put those ones higher because I still actually tear up watching those episodes. They really sort of get to me, like physically I can feel it, whereas in this one, even though I watch the whole thing and I'm sitting there thinking this is really good and it's really good drama and it's good acting and it's just a powerful story, but it doesn't quite invoke the same emotional reaction in me as those other two did. Exactly why that is, I don't know. It's not quite as intense. Maybe it's because there is sort of a more, like the review said, calm. There's sort of a more subdued atmosphere to this episode. Not in everything, but in a lot of it. So it sort of doesn't ramp up the intensity as much as those other two episodes, and yet still maintain sort of a quiet power about it.
Right then.
But the one thing I guess I mentioned that because I didn't mention in the last episode, that the continuing saga of Felton, trying to find his kids, is sort of the last couple of episodes gotten just sort of a brief mention, and in the previous one, of course, we had the reappearance of Detective Gaffney, who is now working in the missing persons department. And Felton evidently had used his services to try to track down his family. And Gaffney shows a little bit of heart for a brief moment, because as he's basically telling Felton, he's saying, well, your case is going to go to the bottom of my stack or whatever, because Felton's getting on him about not having any leads. And Gaffney stops himself, and he basically offers some advice, saying that maybe he should try to get a good private investigator, and that he could actually help him out with finding some names. So Gaffney shows a little bit of a conscience there. He's not necessarily always portrayed as being evil. So anyway, and then of course in this one, Felton gets a call because he evidently did have a PI look into or try to track credit cards, or he did it himself. Either way, but they used the credit cards, so he has a lead for himself to track down for his family. So he took off, and that was why Howard was working whatever case they were working on by herself and seeking out Pembleton's help, in fact.
I think that's pretty much it.
And of course, Bolander, like in the opening, has some further comments about how that it's not the football's not like it's supposed to be. He talks about the grass, and Bayliss makes a comment about, well, they're still like performing for us, and it's the same stadium or whatever. And Bolander says, "So young, so ignorant."
Yep.
And of course, we'll end it on a happy note, or a funny note, that the bar can't be remodeled because George Washington stopped to take a whiz.
Yeah. And very clever that how do they expect to pay back taxes if they can't open and run a business?
Yeah, it's the government for you. There was something. Oh, never mind. Okay, that's something. Yeah, I because I've been watching all this other stuff besides just the episodes in order, I'll forget sometimes when I see something or I read something that's future stuff. But I remember I saw something that reminded me of something cool, because now that I've heard the audiobook of Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets, I now I've seen as it pops up, more of what was actually in the book in future episodes. So it's actually pretty cool the way they stretched out things from the book. And I guess part of that was when David Simon joined as a staff writer, as he put in basically the things that they hadn't done from the book yet, he added them in later years. So I think it actually is something that makes the upcoming seasons have some good stuff because of that. I'll just leave it at that.
Did Simon release like a fuller edition of the book?
I don't know. I have this feeling like that it was reissued at some point with some kind of, but I think the only thing that was added was like maybe an epilogue about what those cops were doing at that point, maybe an update on where everybody was or something like that. I think that was about the only thing that was new material, though. But then, he'd already written at least one other book by then also, because he wrote one called The Corner. And some of the stuff from that ended up being used on the show that he co-created called The Wire later on. And several of Homicide actors, some of the regulars and some of guest stars, ended up being actors on that show as well, in addition to some real-life Baltimore people.
As the same characters or different characters?
I'm pretty sure they were all different characters. I don't think there was anybody... Well, Munch might have shown up as the same character, because he's like shows up as everything on everything as Munch, so he actually might have. I can't remember if that's one of the ones where Munch showed up. He even showed up on the X-Files. That shows you how ubiquitous Munch was for a while there.
Oh, and of course, X-Files was on NBC, is that right?
No, it was actually on Fox.
Oh, so
yeah.
Internet
even
work.
Crossed over to another network, yeah. Most of the shows he was on were on NBC, but that was one exception.
Right. The power to go across networks.
Yeah. Munch is all powerful.
And quite the ENTP.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if people want good example, he's quite an ENTP character. So yeah, a good example of an ENTP. Yeah. Right. Anything else to add?
I guess not. That's all I'm thinking of at the moment in my somewhat tired state. But
Okay.
really good episode. I recommend it to anybody who wants to see some compelling drama.
Yep. So, it's goodbye from me.
Join us next time for, I believe the next episode is From Cradle to Grave, if I remember right, unless I'm getting the...
Let's have a look. Oh, I've not got it.
Yeah.
I've not got the
Anyway,
sticker.
I think that's what it is, so see you next time.
Okay, bye folks.